Hi, my name is Lex Van Dyck. I'm the supplier coordinator with Fireweed Food Hub, and in this video we're going to talk a little bit about scaling up your business toward wholesale and what certifications you might want in order to get there. So why would you want certifications? They can be kind of expensive, and they are certainly a lot of work for a farmer to implement. Some of the reasons behind getting certifications would be to increase your access to retail sales. So retailers are generally looking for one of several types of certifications, perhaps GAP certification, Good Agricultural Practices, or HACCP, Hazard Analysis Critical Control Points certification. Those are for liability purposes for the retailer, so they want to make sure they're working with suppliers who have solid, approved food safety practices in place that are going to reduce the risk of foodborne illness in anything that the retailer is then reselling to the end consumer. It also is great for your own liability insurance. If you're carrying liability insurance as a small producer, that can be quite expensive. Having these certifications might potentially decrease your own insurance costs. And as you're growing your business, having these certifications opens you up to a wider market. When you're thinking through which certification might be a good fit for your farm, there are a couple of differences between GAP and HACCP. GAP is a Canadian certification program, so it applies within Canada. It is quite extensive, and there are different manuals that you can adhere to for the different type of product that you are producing. When it comes to HACCP, that is an international program. So if you're considering selling outside of Canada, you might want to look at HACCP specifically. It also applies to a wider range of products, including things that are grown indoors like microgreens or potentially mushrooms, and it's going to apply to packaged goods as well. HACCP is a very high standard, as is GAP. They both require an external audit, and there are significant costs for both the audit, ongoing enrollment in those programs, and for the infrastructure improvements that you might need on your farm in order to pass those audits. So if that sounds like a little bit more than you want to invest in for your farm at your current stage, you might also consider just implementing your own food safety plan. So there are lots of resources that you can use as a starting place for what you might do. There is a resource document from the University of Iowa Extension Office that we're going to include a link to, and that document runs through a lot of the points that you might want to touch on in your own food safety plan. You're going to want to be reducing the risk of contamination at the point of picking, washing, packing. You're going to want to make sure that temperature is maintained through all stages of the production and delivery process. So making sure that you have appropriate storage for your product, and you also have appropriate transportation infrastructure to maintain safe temperature as you move the product to your distributor or to a customer. Making sure that you also train your staff, if you have staff on your farm, sufficiently that they can run this plan is going to be really important. We're really happy to work with suppliers on developing those kinds of plans outside of these certification programs. And we're also looking at ways to support our producers in accessing the GAP and HACCP trainings, and potentially towards working on some of those preparation pieces for your audits as well. There are also a couple of courses that might apply to small-scale producers. If you don't already have a food handler's certificate, that's an easy, quick, and inexpensive course to take, and has a lot of beneficial information for reducing the risk of passing on foodborne illness with any of your products. So that one is very worth taking. If you don't have it, I would recommend it as soon as possible. There are also lots of courses offered through Food and Beverage Manitoba, and Fireweed is able to potentially support with some small pieces of funding toward those courses as well. We are a member of Food and Beverage Manitoba, and so our supplier members are able to access some of those programs. There's information about HACCP and prepping for HACCP through Food and Beverage Manitoba, and there's also information about other food safety practices that you might want to implement. Another topic that I want to cover is sustainability certification. So sustainability is becoming an increasingly important topic for the consumer as well as for farmers. It's something that we know that our supplier members are really engaged with already. So according to research from IBM and the National Retail Federation, nearly 70% of consumers in the US and Canada think it's important that a brand is sustainable or eco-friendly. And we're seeing that today's consumers are prioritizing sustainability, especially in younger generations. There's a really strong demand for businesses to prove that they're eco-friendly with some kind of credential. And small and sustainable farmers do have a competitive advantage in these areas as retailers are growing in the direction of those trends, trying to look for businesses and farms that are going beyond greenwashing. When you're starting to think about marketing yourself in terms of the sustainability of your operation, you can consult with existing food sustainability indexes and see where your farm stacks up in terms of one or two impacts. So some examples that you might look at include nitrogen use efficiency, soil quality for crop production, pesticide use, synthetic fertilizer use, arable land under organic or spray-free agriculture as a percentage of your agricultural land, livestock density, food system reliance on imports, and we'll link a document where you can look for some more examples underneath this video. Some other considerations that you might want to look at if you're thinking about scaling up toward wholesale would be your farm infrastructure. Do you have everything in place that you need to be able to do wholesale? So do you have a wash station? Do you have a good place to pack? Do you have good storage in place? Do you have your transportation ready? We explore that a little bit in some of the earlier videos, but it does need to be a major component of your thought process around scaling up toward wholesale. Another piece that you want to think about is whether you have the appropriate transportation that is going to allow you to move large orders safely, and do you have staffing or your own time to cover that transportation regularly into the city. That can be a major barrier for producers, and it's worth thinking about in advance. We also want to allow demand to drive the decision to scale up. So if you're seeing that you potentially have a lot of food waste on your farm, you want to make sure that the products that you choose to grow for wholesale match the demand as best you can. It's very hard to move a product that is not in demand after you've grown it, and you can end up stuck with quite a lot of waste. So thinking through what is going to sell, seeking out information in advance about what the demand is going to look like in the area of wholesale you'd like to get into, those are really important. And again, feel free to reach out to Fireweed. We're happy to support with that. A lot of these things that we've talked about, including the certifications and the infrastructure upgrades that you might need, might require some funding. So if you're thinking about how do I fund this, Farm Credit Canada is one option. They're able to provide loans toward infrastructure upgrades and other costs on your farm. There are also often federal and provincial programs that can support you in finding and applying for grants. Manitoba Agriculture as a department is happy to support with that. There are sometimes grants and support programs offered through Young Agrarians, and Community Futures is also a great resource for seeking those pieces of funding. There might be some micro supports also available through Fireweed in the future. We're working on trying to make that available to our producer members. Those would be towards select certifications or certain types of training, so look for that in the future. We'd like to take a moment to thank the organizations and individuals who have helped us to make this project happen. First, I'd like to thank Food and Beverage Manitoba for providing generous support to this video project and the larger wholesale readiness project that it's part of. I'd also like to thank the province of Manitoba for their funding and support. We want to thank the Lord Roberts Community Centre for sharing the space with us to film in. And we want to thank the food hubs, suppliers, and customers who have shared their knowledge and experience with us, helping us to evolve and grow throughout this project.